Okay. So this week's parsha is Parshat Miketz, where Joseph reveals himself to the brothers and causes a whole commotion in the palace of Pharaoh. And there's two lessons that can be learned, or amongst others, from this parsha. I've got some notes here. Um, the brothers felt very guilty when Joseph, what they did to him. And Joseph actually forgave them um, because he knew this was part of the divine plan. So he forgave them and he told them not to feel any guilt. So one of the lessons is to forgive people in life. If one can forgive and let things go, it's very difficult. It's not easy. It's a lifetime work to forgive people if they've really harmed us. It's not so easy to do, but if one can do such a thing, it's very admirable. And the second thing is to try understand that the big picture, that things that happen to everyone are part of the big picture and part of a divine plan. We don't always see it. We're not on the level to, I don't know how many people are on the level to actually think on those terms, but it is part of the divine plan for our lives, or the master plan for our lives, so to speak. That's what Yosef understood, that the selling of him as a slave, and eventually ended up as from a, you could say, from a lowly person to IC, to Pharaoh in the palace, to eventually pave the way for the redemption of the Jews from Egypt 300 years later.
Okay. Um, I do I do agree with you. When you let me know how to forgive and let go for people that have tried to ruin my life, you let me know, Kev.
Yeah.
I just know that unfortunately the best I can do sometimes is just move on. But in terms of inner forgiveness and wishing them love and light, sometimes I hope they get mangled by a car wreck. But I'm working on it. But anyway, on that note, um, so what we were discussing last time on the share is Lance asked a good question. He's asking quite a lot of good questions, which qualitatively was important. And we were talking about, he was asking if the 1/6 had to do with the amount of markup or profit. And what I wanted to answer you guys is it certainly had nothing to do with that. What the 1/6 surcharge was comparatively between different competitors as to the market related tariff for a particular goods or services. So, certain goods and services are price pointed at a fixed amount for that particular value. In fact, everything is a set value. And what you're not allowed to do is put a stumbling block before the blind. And that is where the markup comparatively between two different, not between a competitor and others in the industry, are where they take exception, not about your markup or your profitability, because you must know that there are different, very complex formulas for working out profit. Profit isn't just about taking the goods and increasing it. There's labor costs, there's expertise, there's overheads, there's net profit, there's taxation issues, there's there's wastage and pilfering, there's a myriad of insurances, there's a myriad of calculations. It's just comparative norms for the price point at what's marketed related as fair. So how did this occur? We were dealing with Rav Yehuda, who was quoting the name of Shmuel about the cancellation of debts. because what we learned is a ruling initially of Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, um, regarding if the sabbatical year intercepts a debt year owed over 10 years, and makes no money owing or not. And we dealt with that issue in length. And now we're saying, while we're on the subject of Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, were there other things that were taught? And one of those things were regarding the cancellation of debts. So also we were talking about, does the sabbatical year as a theme reoccur with Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel? So we're saying, in fact, both things. Is if one says to his fellow man who has in fact requested a loan that the money is lent on condition that the sabbatical year not cancel my loan, the sabbatical year cancels it nonetheless. And the Gemara analyzed the ruling and said you cannot make any stipulation contrary to the Torah. And his stipulation is null and void if that is the case. And we compared it to the fact that if you've got a contractual arrangement between an employer and an employee, but the employee rate is less than the government dictates minimum wage is, you'll land yourself up in CCMA before you can say that contract is binding. So a national law supersedes contractual law. But the question is, the Gemara says, well, is in fact that the case? Can you not waiver your personal rights in lieu of having a deal set forth? So in other words, I think a prosbul is one of those, in that you technically have the right not to pay it back, but you also have the right not to get money lent to you. So the thing of it is, sometimes there are mechanisms that the Torah gives you for your rights, but if it's not suitable for the other party, then you've got to weigh in whether or not your rights supersede your need to have the transaction taking place. But certainly most would agree that there's a difference between you wavering your rights and the seller demanding rights that are contrary to the Torah. So we're going to see the fine line of where this comes in. Because it's been said that if someone says to his fellow man before closing a sale, the sale is on condition that you have no claim of fraud against me, what does this actually mean? So this is where Lance's question came in. There was a verse in Leviticus, Vayikra, chapter 25, verse 14. And it says, when you make a sale to your fellow, let no man defraud his fellow. So where do we see the summarization of this? We learned it in Bava Kama, and Bava Kama referred to Bava Metzia 49b to 51a. And basically, if the overcharge, and Kevin gave this over perfectly last time, is more than a sixth, the transaction is not binding upon the buyer. Okay, can get out of it. If the overcharge is a sixth, the transaction is binding, meaning the rest of the terms and conditions of the sale, the buyer is obligated to pay the seller and, in fact, has committed to purchasing that house, for example, but the seller must reimburse the buyer the amount of the overcharge. Okay, so what do we see in subtlety is that if you have a purchase of a house, if it's more than a sixth, you can actually cause that contract of that offer to purchase or that deed of sale to be completely null and void in all cases, and frees you to purchase another house. If that's more than a sixth. If it's a sixth, then you're obligated to purchase that house. However, that extra charge will be reimbursed, so you're paying the market-related rate, but you're contractually obligated to purchase that house. If the overcharge is less than a sixth, it's not considered fraud, guys, and no reimbursement is necessary because the margin is too small. In other words, sometimes you'll go to different places and there are differences in price. If you're going to go to the Pupik of Boxburg and purchase bread, or you purchase certain things, the rate per square meter for rental in a shopping center is a heck of a lot less than Sandton City Nelson Mandela Square. for that same item. And since they're paying more for rent, it is at their discretion that they cover their overhead. Whether you choose to buy it or not is up to you. So now that we've understood this concept, basically, Rav brings us saying, he says, the buyer has the right to claim fraud against the seller because the Torah's law of fraud supersedes the right of individuals to dispose of their property as they see fit. But Shmuel is in a disagreement. You know, guys, there's always two contradictions. You've got Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. You've got Rav and Shmuel. And we see this quite often. So Rav said the Torah supersedes the right of the individuals. Shmuel says the buyer does not have a right to claim fraud against him because when he consented to the stipulation, he willingly forfeited the right provided by the Torah to have his loss redressed. So we see, according to Shmuel, in cases where fraud supports Shmuel supports the right of the person to make a stipulation contrary to the Torah. So then the question is, why should he not make the same allowance for the cancellation of a debt by Shemitah? So what am I saying is originally this Gemara now is contrasting Rav Yehuda's opinion on Shmuel, who said that you have to pay. You don't have to pay if the Shemitah intercepts the 10-year loan, which means to contradict this opinion, it would seem, of Rav Yehuda on Shmuel to say that a person can make a transaction that would supersede the right of the Torah. Has everybody seen the contradiction? Arthur, what's the contradiction?
But the two rabbis that don't agree.
No,
That's the
that is the
contradiction.
vaguest answer, and it's the most beautiful way to answer it. That works when your wife says, Arthur, what was I saying? And you repeat the whole last sentence. I've often seen you do that, and you can get away with it, but this is going to need a little bit more work.
Well, the contradiction is basically with the Schmidt. The one saying that, never mind. Fine. My brain's fried. It's called, it's like, I'm not a lawyer, so this is like lawyer stuff. Seriously.
Okay, no. So what I'm saying is here, we understand if there's a contradiction with two different opinions of. What we don't understand is the first case where Rav Yehuda quoted Shmuel, and he said, look, the Torah law supersedes contractual law, because what was the contractual law there? It's that one individual, the debtor borrowed from the creditor 1,000 zuz, and the creditor says, I want it back. But the Torah law seems to say that the seventh year Shemitah, according to that interpretation, intercepts any money owing after the 7 years. Not everybody agrees. Rav Kahuna says it's not true. He doesn't agree. He said it doesn't intercept. Otherwise, the Adam Zommerman would have paid the full 1,000, not the difference of what that loan interest level was worth. So what we're saying here is there seems to be a contradiction, because here Shmuel is saying that the Torah that the Torah in this particular case in other words, that the Torah can be superseded by the buyer forfeiting his rights. That's what he's saying here. Rav is saying that the Torah sticks, and contractual law is governed by Torah law. It cannot override Torah law. That's what Rav is saying. Rav Yehuda, in the name of Shmuel, is saying here is that a person can waiver their rights given to them by the Torah in a contract. But what we saw before is it wasn't the case, because you had a contract between a creditor and a debtor for 1,000 zuz. And what Rav Yehuda was saying in the name of Shmuel is he doesn't have to pay back anything because it's intercepted by the Shemitah year, which means Torah law of the Shemitah year seems to intercept the repayment after that time period, which seems that Torah law has superseded contractual law. Do you see the comparison that the Gemara is trying to say? It seems that Rav Yehuda and Shmuel is quoting two different thoughts here in the process. Can you see? Art? Lance has a question.
Damon,
Yeah.
is the principal thing, is that Torah or rabbinic?
The prosbul is rabbinic, but handing over your loan documents to the court, which is not quite the prosbul. A prosbul is a declaration, but it has the same effect. But handing over your loan documents to the court is biblical, whereas the prosbul is rabbinic. But obviously there was a biblical problem with the confliction, and therefore Rav Hillel instituted the prosbul exactly on this point of waiving one's personal rights in order that you get money out of the creditor, because he's not going to want to write his money off. So you might have all the rights in the world to not pay back if the Shemitah year is intercepted, or the Shemitah year occurs in the same year that you're paying back, whichever opinion you hold by, but you ain't going to get any money lent to you if you're poor.
Okay, so to sum it up, basically, this guy's taken out a loan for 10 years. Okay, now it intersects because there's now a Shemitah year. They're saying that the Torah, which is a Shemitah year, a Shemitah decree, overrules the contractual law, which is a 10-year or 10-year payback. But handing it over to the court puts it back into the court of the Torah law again. So there's no contradiction then.
Well, that's correct, but there is still a contradiction on Rav Yehuda on Shmuel. So let me just explain what Lance is saying, is that it would appear when you first look at it, according to Rav Yehuda on Shmuel, his opinion is that if the Shemitah year occurred in the 7th year, anything that surpassed that in terms of time period, if the Shemitah year crossed at a point prior, anything after the 7th year, nothing is owed. Rav Kahana said that's not true. It only occurs if the Shemitah year occurs in the same year as when the debt falls due. Because otherwise, how do you explain the fact that we make the Eidim Zomamim not pay the full 1,000 zuz, but just the difference in what the interest would be worth of borrowing it for 30 days versus 10 years. Okay? And the answer to that, according to, as you know, according to Rava, is saying it's a very simple answer. And that answer is all you need to know that you're dealing with here in a case where one lends on collateral. So Lance, it's not that you're dealing with where you're pressing the borrower, which is the prohibition. Okay, because if you remember, you had this case in Deuteronomy chapter 15 verse 2 and Deuteronomy 15 chapter 15 verse 3, is that they did an injunction of he may not press with the injunction of, and this is the matter of relinquishment Shemitah, let every creditor relinquish the claim which he claims against his fellow. He may not press his fellow, obviously, for payment, for a year of relinquishment has been proclaimed unto Hashem. So therefore, what we're saying is here is Rava's argument is that you're talking about a person that will only lend 1,000 zuz if he's got 1,000 zuz worth of collateral. Doesn't mean he's going to bankrupt the debtor. It means if he's not going to get paid back because the Shemitahs either come at the same year or intercepted, depending on one opinion you're holding by, he's just going to sell. He's got the property to sell. Doesn't have to press anybody. He's got the leverage. He has the collateral. So therefore, there's not contravening pressing his fellow Jew. He's got all the cards, Lance, basically. It's a bit different. It's to a case where and that's where the prosbul comes in, is that basically the court is issued to collect on your behalf because a Jew cannot press another Jew. The court, on the other hand, can collect a normal debt. Exactly that point. And that's what Rava's point is, not against Rav Kahana, but in the case that Yehuda is talking about Shmuel's reference about the interception. So Rav is saying it doesn't matter whether there's an interception. If you've got a prosbul, if you've handed over your loan document to a court or you have collateral, you're fine. Okay? And that answers Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana's case is that even if you don't have those things, you're fine because the seventh year Shemitah doesn't intersect. It's only if the seventh year intersects with the debt owing on the 10th year. In other words, Shemitah, which wouldn't happen unless it's a 7-year loan, actually. So that's exactly why Rav Kahana said the whole fact that the Eidim Zumamim owe the interest point and not the capital of 1,000 zuz is proof against Rav Yehuda's opinion on Shmuel, and Rav is saying no. Because the case in our Mishnah talks about collateral, prosbul, and handing documents to the court. I'm making a different point, Lance. I'm saying to Arthur, and this is where, Arthur, you need to just be aware, is that what it's bringing here is a case as an argument with Rava and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel. Now, you have always two. Do you know you have Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai? Arthur? Are you asleep? Taser, taser, taser. What? You can't speak to me. He's lost interest.
I can talk to you. Damon, I was just thinking in my head here.
Yeah.
Solve this whole problem. Just work out when the Shemitah year is coming, either do it the year before the Shemitah arrives or do it a year after the loan. Problem solved. None of this stuff goes on.
No, Lance exactly said that in the very beginning. He said you'd have to be an absolute moron to drag it out where it could be undercut, or you'd have to be an absolute tzaddik. And he put the two together. And I said to him, just be a little careful about putting moron and tzaddik together. But he was right in essence in that he was saying you'd have to put yourself in a vulnerable position because he was going according to the Ritva, because he said you're not allowed to charge interest. And we say, no, the Eidim Zumamim are being paid a penalty for wishing to cost this on the accused. But in fact, a Jew can't charge interest, so it's what a Jew would charge a non-Jew in terms of interest. That's how it be calculated, and it's put as a penalty against them. The other answer of the Ritva is saying, look, a Jew, if he lends that money, would be prepared to take a dive on some of the money owing, even though he can't charge interest, because he charged 950 zuz instead of 1,000 zuz to get his money back in 30 days instead of 10 years. And he might just quite honestly make a stipulation saying, I'm not giving you 10 years. Exactly as Arthur said. What the point of the Gemara is trying to do here, Arthur, is trying to teach you different principles. It's trying to teach you when contractual law supersedes Torah law, when you can waiver your rights as one of the parties, which the Torah gives you. In other words, is it considered contravening Torah law, or can you waiver those rights for your benefit? Now, as far as labor law is concerned in South Africa, you can't, because you cannot take advantage of the desperate and poor and say, you have no job, so whatever I'm prepared to pay you, be grateful, because that's actually taking advantage and extorting somebody that's in an invidious position. So that's where certain times it's problematic. And it's also, we're going to learn in the Torah the wording. It's a heck of a difference to say, I, as the buyer, waiver my rights, compared to, as the seller, I'm not going to listen to the rights, the laws of the Torah. The one is acceptable, the one isn't. So the wording of a contract makes a difference, we'll learn. But what we're trying to learn here is principles are. And one of the principal problems that we're having here is when Rav Yehuda is quoting Shmuel, we're having two contradictions. What's the contradiction now? Because Rav is saying that Torah law supersedes all contractual law. Okay? What Shmuel is saying is a person can waiver their personal rights that the Torah gives them, and therefore the contractual law supersedes the general principles, and a person has a choice. The only problem with Rav Yehuda quoting Shmuel on that now, doesn't mean Shmuel said it, means is that Rav Yehuda quoting Shmuel said the opposite before. He said that basically an individual's rights, the creditor to collect his money, is intercepted by the Shemitah year on the 7th year, and therefore he forfeits his rights to collect because Torah law supersedes contractual law. So he's saying something contrary before. Okay, Rava makes a statement and says, okay, well, Rav Yehuda and Shmuel must be talking about that the Mishnah still stands because it's talking about on collateral on a prosbul or loan documents. But still, we're seeing a contradiction of Rav Yehuda and Shmuel. So what we're saying is, was it correct with what Rav Yehuda said at Shmuel before, or now because they're two different contradictions to each other, or is there a way to resolve it? Does everybody at least hear the problem? What's the problem, Arthur? I know the problem. You're trying to sleep and I'm giving you a shirt. What's
the problem at the moment is now
What?
is they're trying to figure out the problem at the moment
Yeah.
is that they're trying to decide, is it Torah law that supersedes, or can it be the other like civil law that like an agreement that can overcome that? And they're saying it's only Torah law. Other guys
That's no
no,
problem. But the problem now is we have a particular opinion that in the first case said Torah law supersedes contractual law. And in this particular case, we're seeing an example where he argues with Rav and says that a person can waive their rights under contractual law to not have to adhere to the general Torah law set out. So we're saying, how can the same person have two contradictions? That's the problem here. You get it?
Kind of. I'm not a lawyer, but kind of.
Okay. Kevin, you want to give it over?
Can't give it over like you with sources, but the contradiction between Torah law and civil law.
No. What we're saying here, guys, okay, is all I'm saying is Rav Yehuda and Shmuel is giving two opposite opinions. In the beginning, he said that the Shemitah year supersedes contractual law, and here he's saying that a person can waive their personal rights in the contract to basically override the Torah general principles. So we're seeing, so let's just try and resolve the contradiction. We got 10 minutes.
So you said override their rights, waive their rights over to Torah law.
Actually override the Torah's general principle, yeah.
And follow and go with civil law, go with the civil civil law ruling.
The problem is Rav Yehuda is saying two different contrary statements in the first and the second. So what we're saying is we want to see if there's what do you call it, some sort of
maybe it's referring to a different case or something.
No, it is, but he still has to answer how with even two different cases. Firstly, it's not entire. It is to a certain extent, but the principle should remain similar. Do you get what I'm saying, Gavin? So
no, based on the wording, it sounds absolutely contradictory.
Okay, so
but Damon, how can he? Because Torah Shemitah, all loans are forsaken, or people get their. So how can his opinion hold any water?
Yes, and that's the Gemara uses the exact same words as Kevin, basically. He said, so why should then he not make the same allowance for the cancellation of a debt by Shemitah? That a person, in order to get the money, can say that the debt is still owed, and Shemitah is not going to interfere. Exactly as Kevin said, that's what it's saying here. So, I'm just going to clarify and cover a bit of ground, but it has been said about that statement of Shmuel concerning fraud. Rav Anan said, it was explained to me personally by Shmuel himself, not Rav Yehuda and Shmuel, that whether the waiver is valid depends on the stipulation of the wording. So in other words, one of the issues is here, it says, on the condition that you have no claim of fraud against me, then he has no right to claim fraud against him, and the stipulation is valid even though it's contrary to the Torah law. So what do we mean by that here? Let me just explain. Is that it's Shmuel's view directly, as was explained by Rav Hanan, that a person can waiver, if they want, it might be stupid, their personal rights in order to get a deal passed. Okay. It's different if a person then uses the stipulation on condition there was no fraud. because that's not interpreted as almost an indemnity against fraud. That's a statement by the seller stating that there's no fraud that's taken place. But then the buyer does not waive his rights because there was a stipulation by the seller that there's no fraud. So the transaction is invalidated because we now see there is fraud. So the first one, again, the wording is that if there is fraud or you found anything, I'm indemnified. It's you contractually obligated and you have to pay, etc., is different to the case where it states that there's no fraud. It's almost like saying when you're buying a car, not secondhand but new, the car's in perfect condition and in fact it was a lie. That's misrepresentation as opposed to wavering of rights. So that's Rav Anand's opinion on Shmuel directly. So the last stipulation, so if we take this on the case of the sabbatical year, if it's written in the contract on the condition that the sabbatical year not cancel my debt, then the sabbatical year does cancel the debt. So you can never make a written declaration that a law of Torah doesn't exist, because the last stipulation doesn't imply a waiver by the borrower, but rather it's a stipulation on the part of the lender that the Torah's law not operate in this case. And even Shmuel agrees that that cannot be stipulated. Okay? So what we're saying is, just hang on, guys. Shmuel draws a fine distinction in regard to the validity of stipulations, contrary to the Torah. Okay? There's a fine distinction. So the basis for the validity of such stipulations is a person's prerogative to waive any rights provided by the Torah for his benefit. So consequently, such stipulations are valid only if they imply the individual's waiver of his rights. As to when, for example, he agrees that the lender's condition that you not cancel my debt. But intrinsically, the Torah law remains intact. So the individual has merely waived his prerogatives under the law. However, the seller can't say that a Torah law is suspended. So, however, even agreeing to the stipulation that the Shemitah year is going to be meaningless, because it cannot be beyond the jurisdiction of the Shemitah year. So, in other words, the Torah and its laws aren't subject to the lender's whim as to whether or not they should be applied in a given situation. Otherwise, there'd be no need for Hillel to do a presbol. So we are actually distinguishing between three things here. The one issue that we're distinguishing against is, how do I put this? Is that, let's just see how much time we've got. We've got 4 minutes. Is that there's a difference between the buyer contractually waivering the rights as opposed to the seller stating that there's no fraud that's taken place. In other words, I'm saying you're buying a car and it's all brand new and you find out that the car is second-hand. That's misrepresentation. If you're saying you're waivering your rights in terms of the guarantee period and it should be a year and you're saying you'll take it at 6 months because it's a fantastic deal, you've got that prerogative according to Shmuel. You cannot, for example, obviously override rights of Shabbat. In other words, the seller can't say that the Shemitah law doesn't apply to a loan as if it's not acknowledged, because that supersedes. So there's only certain rights you can waiver, and only the buyer can waive those if he wants to, but not the seller ignoring laws of Torah application, which is almost the equivalent to national governance. Any questions?
Sorry, this fraud are you saying it's on the seller or the grantor of the loan? You're saying like a car sells a second-hand car which has defects, which were hidden defects, which should have been revealed. Then civil law may supersede Torah law.
Yes, because it was bought under misrepresentation, absolutely. But if the buyer said, listen, I'll waive a year warranty in favor of a 6-month warranty because I'm buying, for example, a generic charger, laptop charger, which doesn't have a year warranty, and the country generally says you should sell products with a year warranty. In this particular case, the buyer has chosen to waiver it. But certainly with regards to issues of Deraisa Halacha, the seller can't say the laws of Shabbos don't operate here, and in terms of the Shemitah or anything like that. There is a prosbor which the court can collect, but this is a document that the court would obviously collect, or there's collateral, but would have to fit within Torah. So it's a lot about wording. It's a lot about intent. It's a lot about protective mechanisms the Torah gives an individual, which should not be waived ideally, unless you're dealing with somebody that's very desperate. And especially there's yeah. So that's those are the nuances there. All clear, guys?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get together tomorrow at 7:20 to 8 because it's my mom's yahrzeit. Arthur, you got to work at 8. Is that right?
Oh, so you're not doing the
Yeah.
shiur tomorrow at 5 o'clock then, only on Thursday.
No, tomorrow I want to do it
I
on
mean this year, the
No, it must be a Hanukkah
Makkos shiur.
because
It's going to
I'm
be
going to do a
continue on
Hanukkah
Thursday.
to
So
your
tomorrow, 7:20, you say?
Yeah. I mentioned
Okay.
it last week. It's 7:20 because it has to be within my mom's yahrzeit to do the Hanukkah.
It's candlelighting time.
Yeah.
Nightfall, basically,
Yeah.
because that's the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we do the normal Gemara shiur at 5:10 on Thursday, which would be getting the Gemara shiur in. Guys, thank you so much.
Shkar. Thank you, Damon.
I
Shkar. Thank
appreciate
you.
your
Thank you.
being there. Really, I know you're exhausted. Sorry, mate. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Cheers.